Separate to this, Chris is really pissed off. Like, she does detention once or twice, maybe just once, and she's like, "No, this isn't gonna happen. I'm not putting up with this crap." And she blames Carrie. She doesn't take any responsibility for being a bully or being mean. In her eyes, she's like at the top of the high school pyramid. Carrie's like nothing to her. She doesn't see an issue with being mean. She doesn't see why she should be punished with the detention. There's no way she should be missing out on prom. And she's got a boyfriend, which is a very young John Travolta, which, you know, he was really handsome back in the day, so that's a bit of a thrill. A very young John Travolta, who's a bit of a rough guy from the wrong side of town, and Chris is able to talk a very young John Travolta into a really horrible plan. And I'm not going to get into the revenge plan right now, but Chris is really nasty. The other thing is Chris is a bit of a, like, she's a princess and she's spoiled, but she's really sexually liberated. So she goes out with lots of guys and she likes bad boys. And she likes the power she has over men. And that's sort of played out in a few scenes. I think it's talked about more in the book. In the scenes in the movie, she really like teases the John Travolta character into doing what she wants. Like, she uses her sexuality to get him to do what she wants. And I think it's an interesting thing. We'll talk about it a bit more when we get into the analysis. But yeah, she really manipulates and toys with John Travolta, using the only power she feels she has, which is her sexuality. She gets him on board to do paybacks to Carrie. And I mean, all Carrie did was nothing. Chris is horrible. But she's going to punish Carrie because Carrie made her have school detention and miss out on school prom, which is absurd. But yeah. So for now, it's good to know Chris has a plan to get back at Carrie for making her miss out on prom. The next part is Carrie getting ready. Oh, no, she doesn't get to get ready. She has to tell her mum that, well, no, before she even tells her mum, Carrie's reluctant to go to the prom with Curly Tops. She thinks it's a trick. She doesn't understand why he'd want to go to the prom with her. And eventually Curly Tops tells Carrie it was because she liked his poem. So back to earlier when I talked about the director using head shots to frame different scenes. So there's an earlier scene where they're in class and the English teacher reads out a poem which was written by Curly Tops. And it's a really sweet poem. It's quite lovely. And Carrie's a bit daydreamy and she goes, "Oh, it's beautiful." And everybody laughs at Carrie because everybody's always laughing and mocking Carrie. But Curly Top sort of notices that Carrie liked the poem, but the English teacher is really nasty and sort of tries to humiliate Carrie because she liked the poem. Even the English teacher mocks Carrie just because she likes the poem. He sort of makes fun of her, maybe because it's not a sophisticated poem, or I don't quite understand why the English teacher has to be mean to Carrie as well, but he mocks her taste maybe. But yeah, eventually Curly Tops convinces Carrie, like he really pushes her to go to the prom with him. And he convinces Carrie that the reason he wants to take her to the prom is because she liked his poem. He actually goes to her house to ask her again to go to the prom, which is really dangerous for Carrie because her mum is so closed-minded and against sex and against boys and against dating. So this guy, Curly Tops, is on a front doorstep, being all jokey and teenage, and, he's the popular guy, so he's got nothing to worry about. But it's actually really dangerous for Carrie to have this guy on her doorstep because her mum's a psycho. So all Carrie's thinking about is, I need to get this guy off my doorstep because if my mum finds out, she's going to put me in that horrible prayer closet or who knows. And Carrie isn't socially savvy. She doesn't know how to act around boys. She's really isolated. So this is all weird and strange, and she doesn't know anything about interacting with guys. So she's agreeing to go to the prom with him, mainly to get him off her doorstep. And because he said he liked her poem. So she's like, okay, cool, I'll go to the prom with you. After that, she does tell the gym teacher, and the gym teacher's really happy for her. She sort of tells Carrie, well, she gives her some makeup tips and how to wear her hair. Carrie, in the book, Carrie starts to lose some weight. And also in the book, it talks about Carrie having, acne and stuff. So she tries to eat healthier so her skin won't break out. And the mum doesn't like that because obviously the mum wants her to be unattractive so she doesn't get attention from boys. But Carrie's sort of finding her independence and wanting to put some action into her appearance. So taking some self-pride, I think, is the better way to look at it. In the movie, you can see, she's always hunched over and head down and hair in her face, where when she's getting ready for the prom, she's actually looking at herself as a developing young woman, and it's really sweet. I think the director really did a good job of capturing that innocence of a young girl growing into womanhood and noticing herself as a young woman and appreciating herself. And, I don't know about all the people watching this. I know for me, that journey, especially because as a kid and as a young woman, there was a lot of trauma. I won't get into details today, but that journey into finding my beauty and myself as a beautiful woman, that hasn't been a clear journey for me. And it's took me years to appreciate and celebrate my beauty as a woman. My sexuality is still confusing. It's been its own journey to reclaim that part of myself, but definitely to be able to see myself as a beautiful woman, no matter what size I am, that's been a huge journey for me. Probably only in my 30s and 40s that I've been able to see myself as beautiful. So I think the director captures that really wonderfully in the movie. And I think Sissy Spacek does an amazing portrayal of that for the character of Carrie. Again, I think the fact in the book it's covered that Carrie was a big girl and she loses weight and stuff, I think that's really interesting. And I think if there was a movie version of that aspect, that would be really interesting because it's a whole other layer. But with the remakes, it's weird because they tend to choose pretty actresses to portray Carrie. And, they might try to show her as unpopular or weird or geeky. But I think the 1976 version is the only one that successfully captures Carrie as looking like an outsider. And Sissy Spacek is definitely pretty. She's not unattractive. But in her acting and in her physical portrayal of Carrie, she's able to capture that insecurity and that anxiety and feeling like an outsider. And, her body language captures really well how she's hiding her body, feeling ashamed, looking down, hiding her face. I think that does an amazing job in portraying Carrie as not feeling confident, and then how she slowly starts to come out of her shell, which is a big part of puberty. Like for so many of us, that whole awkward thing of you're a kid and then all of a sudden your body's changing, you know, you, especially as a woman, I guess for guys as well. I'm not a guy, so I don't know, but your body changes in ways you have no control over. And then all of a sudden it's like you're on display and men are noticing you, and it's really hard. And I'm going to talk about it later, so I'll leave that comment there. So what are we up to? Carrie's getting ready for the prom, and she's sort of getting used to seeing herself as more as a young woman, and she's getting a little bit confident. Chris has talked her boyfriend, the young John Travolta, into helping her get revenge on Carrie. Sue Snell has talked to Curly Tops, and he's taking Carrie to the prom. The gym teacher confronts Sue and Curly Tops to find out what's really going on, and if the fact that Curly Tops is taking Carrie to the prom, is it sincere? Is it a good thing? It better not be something to humiliate Carrie further. So the gym teacher is feeling really protective over Carrie, and she doesn't want anyone to hurt Carrie any further because Carrie's been through enough. There's some really fun, playful scenes, like when they go looking for a tuxedo for Curly Tops. Again, I think those fun, playful scenes help give the horror movie more of a teenage. These are all teenagers, these are all young people, and even though a lot of horrible stuff happens in the movie, we're still dealing with people in a awkward time of life, and some are more confident than others, but it's set in a small town during high school. So I think those fun, campy scenes, not the ones with Carrie's mum, because she's a lunatic, and that is genuinely terrifying. I think that's probably more the horror. That's more where the horror kicks in than the actual horror bits. The fact that there are people in this world who use their religion to abuse children and to abuse other people in horrific ways, that's the real horror of life. Not Anyway, we'll talk about that in another video. So yeah, there's a bit of fun with the tuxedo scene. There's another scene where Chris and John Travolta's mates kill a pig in a pig, wherever pigs live. So that's them preparing for whatever Chris has fought up. And then finally we come to the final part of the movie, and this is where everything comes together. So, sorry, I didn't mention it. Carrie has been reading up on telekinesis, and so she's borrowing books and learning about this gift that she has, and finding out that she can control her power, telekinesis. She can move things and control objects with her thoughts. And the book she's been borrowing from the library has been helping her learn how to use it. She's been practicing at home. I think she smashes some mirrors. And when her mum, she tells her mum about her gift, or it comes up in conversation, as it does when you have special powers. Her mum, I think, confronts her, and Carrie says, it's a gift. It's from God. It's not from the devil. And her mum, of course, says, no, you're being deceived. It's from the devil. It's a power from the devil. And her mum starts ranting and saying, let's go in the prayer closet and pray together. Like, her mum's so over the top, and she's trying to grab Carrie. And Carrie's like, no, mama. And all these knives fly out of their place in the kitchen and just fly towards her mum. And I think that it pins her mum to the wall, or maybe that happens later. But it scares the crap out of her mum. Her mum backs off, and Carrie goes off to work on a dress for the prom. And her mum, it sort of closes up on her mum, and her mum's like, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. So you get a really bad feeling that Carrie's mum isn't going to put up with Carrie throwing knives at her. It's a little something to come. It's the movie's telling us Carrie's mum not good with Carrie having telekinesis. So then we're up to the final part of the movie, which is prom night. And Curly Tops goes pick up Carrie. Carrie's mum is just so anxious that Carrie's even leaving the house, not let alone that Carrie's going out with a boy. Her mum's trying to talk her out of leaving the house. The classic line is, they're all going to laugh at you. She's just really trying to not let Carrie leave the house and trying to convince Carrie to stay at home. They can get on their knees and pray all night. You don't have to go to prom, Carrie. And Carrie's like, no, it'll be fine. I'm going to come home early. Nothing bad's going to happen. Please let me just have this night. And her mum's just being hysterical. Finally, Carrie uses, I think, her powers to just push mum on the bed, leave her alone. Tommy, I think that's his name, Tommy, Curly Tops, rocks up in his car. Carrie leaves. They get to prom. Everything looks beautiful. Everybody's shocked because Carrie looks so beautiful in her gown. Somebody says, where did you get your dress? And Carrie's like, I made it myself. And it really is like just a beautiful dream for Carrie. She's with the gorgeous guy in his tuxedo. She's smiling. Everything looks like a wonderful fairy land. I was going to say, I think it's actually an underwater sea theme. So, yeah, it just looks beautiful. Carrie looks like a beautiful princess. Chris, as part of her scheme, Chris has set the votes up so that Carrie and Curly Tops are voted prom queen and prom king. And that's important for later. So Tommy, I think his name is actually Tommy. I think I finally got his name. I'll stick to Curly Tops. So Curly Tops and Carrie are just having a really simple date. Carrie's happy, but she's a bit overwhelmed because she's never been on a date before. She's never been socially accepted, and people are genuinely just being nice to her. Like, people love her outfit. There are a few of the mean girls, like the friends with Chris, who are like snickering and pointing at her and just being nasty. But there's other people who've come up and just talked to Carrie and being nice to her. So she's getting that sense of social acceptance amongst her peers. Curly Tops is being the perfect gentleman. They sit together. Carrie just wants some time to take it all in. The gym teacher comes across and talks to Carrie and tells her how beautiful she looks and just gives her, just a bit of a pep talk, trying to tell Carrie, good on you. You came out of your shell. You look so lovely. I think the gym teacher, the gym teacher is really proud of Carrie for stepping out and making an effort, not only with her looks, but to try to connect to the high school culture. More on that later. So yeah, the gym teachers gives her a big hug and Carrie's really happy. Her and Tommy have a dance, and there's a really, again, with the director using some really cool camera tricks. They're dancing and it slowly starts to spin, and then it gets faster and faster and faster. I actually started feeling dizzy. And I think that's representing how Carrie's feeling. She's really happy and really enjoying everything, but the spinning getting faster, I think, is her maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed or a bit nervous or on edge. Almost like it's too good to be true. All these beautiful experiences and feelings that she's having right now. Maybe it's just too much. It's too much. It's too good to be true. Her and Curly Top's kiss, which I think is so lovely. At the same time, Sue, she was at home having dinner with her family, but she leaves to come and check out how the prom is going. So she sort of sneaks in and she's watching everything from behind. I think you guys called them bleachers, the seats inside the gym. So she's watching from the side and she can see Tommy and Carrie dancing, and she looks like she's really happy with that. She looks like she's happy everything's going well. But while she's like leaning against the bleacher and just looking at everything, she can feel something twitching on the bleacher. And when she looks, she notices that the thing that's twitching is like rope, and it's twitching. And so she looks at the rope and she looks up at the rope, and the rope's going all the way up, and it's connected to something that is also twitching, and then it goes across, and there's like a streamer that falls off, and that streamer was covering the rope. And so at the same time that she's noticing this, the votes for Queen and King of the Prom are counted, and it turns out that Carrie and Curly Tops have won. They're going to be King and Queen of the Prom. So they start walking towards the stage to get crowned as King and Queen of the Prom. At the same time, the gym teacher sees Sue noticing, like, she sees Sue looking at Tommy or Curly Tops and Carrie and then looking up. And so she's running to confront Sue to find out what is Sue doing there. So all these things are happening simultaneously. And again, I think the director does a really cool thing where he shows all these slices of everything happening at the same time, which used to happen. It's a technique used a lot in the 70s, not something that's shown so much in movies now, except it does get used when directors want to make a movie feel like it's from the 1970s. I think Late Night with the Devil used a similar technique in that movie, like where they used angles and slicing techniques like that to make it feel like it was a movie from the 1970s. So well done there. Anyway, so everything's happening at the same time. Sue Snell is looking up and she sees that the rope that is twitching is attached to a bucket. And the bucket is on like a little beam, and it's right over the spot where Carrie and Curly Tops are being crowned as King and Queen of Prom. The background music at this time is really sensational. It's like building up, building up, building up, and it gets really intense, and it really makes you feel like you're on the edge of your seat because, like, what is about to happen? The gym teacher has nearly reached, no, she does reach Sue, and she grabs her and she's pulling her away from the side of the bleachers, and he's pulled her in front of where the steps are, in where Carrie and Curly Tops are being crowned. And just as they're being crowned King and Queen of the Prom, Chris, up on top of the stage with John Travolta, pulls on the twitching rope, which tips the bucket, and out of the bucket comes all this pig's blood. It hits Carrie and Curly Tops in one big group, and they're covered in pig's blood. And there's a moment of silence, and then the bucket hits Curly Top on the back of the head, and he drops. The silence keeps going, and Carrie is shocked. She looks down. She sees she's covered in blood, and when she looks up, the camera goes into like these diagonal foreshots. So everywhere she looks, it's like these diagonal diamonds. Everybody is in four. And she sees everybody laughing at her. And she hears her mum say, "They're all going to laugh at you." And her mum's words are echoing, and Carrie just sees people pointing and laughing, and also some people covering their mouths and laughing. And it hits her that she's been humiliated again in front of the whole high school. And she is filled with rage. And then she looks at the gym doors, and using her telekinesis power, she slams the door closed. And this is when Carrie gets her revenge. She slams all the doors closed in the gym so nobody can get out. It's still very quiet and people are sort of laughing, but also there's a group of people, including the gym teacher, who've rushed up to the stage and they're getting curly tops. They're grabbing him and trying to help him. They don't know if he's alive, conscious, whatever, but they're trying to help him. Carrie is just caught in the humiliation and in her rage that she's covered in blood and that these people are laughing at her. And so she's closed all the gym doors so nobody can get out. Sue, when the doors closed, it actually kind of shoved her outside. So Sue is not in the gym at this point. She's outside and she's sort of able to see in. And the first thing I think Carrie does is, after she's closed all the doors so no one can get out, is she starts the water hoses and the sprinklers. And she's wetting everyone. One of the hoses is really powerful. It's one of those fire engine hoses. So the water coming from that is really powerful. And she's actually like squirting people with the fire engine hose. And the force from the hose is pushing people into the walls. And it looks like the girl with the red hat, who was like Chris's sidekick, it looks like the hose is used to kill her or make her pass out or damage her. We're not sure. But she makes everybody get wet and people are running around and screaming, confused, but they're all covered in water now. And I think the hoses keep going. Chris and John Travolta have managed to get out of the building. So they're not trapped in the building either. They've taken off. After they saw Carrie and Curly Tops covered in blood, they thought it was awesome, but they got out pretty quick. Also, John Travolta, he's like, this is finally done. I completed what you wanted of me. You need to pay up because Chris has basically promised him sex. So he's like, cool, deed done. Let's go do what you said. So they're out of the gym. Sue is sort of watching through the window of the gym door and seeing all this chaos. Everybody's wet from all the hoses and sprinkler system. Carrie then puts all the electricity on, all the power in the place. Things are exploding with voltage. In the book, it talks about Carrie making everybody dance funny, which is when the voltage is going through people's body and the shocks making them shake. So she's electrocuting people. Things are exploding. Things catch fire. In the movie, it looks so horrific because you got all these teenagers screaming and burning and electrocuted, and Carrie's just on the stage covered in blood, and she looks scary as hell. And you know she's out of her mind by then. You know she's just lost all contact with reality, and she's just all the suffering and humiliation and crap that she's gone through, she's just given it all back to everyone in high school, because in her mind they were all in on it. In her mind, that last piece of humiliation was what they all wanted, was to see her laugh. You know, she's got all the crap that her mum put in her head, that the world is your enemy and the only safe space is her mum and their weird religious beliefs. So in her head, she's used her powers to get back at everyone. And now that she's gotten back at everyone, she just wants to go home. So she leaves the high school. She just closes the door and it's still on fire and people are screaming and dying. And she starts walking home down the road. And Chris and John Travolta are in John Travolta's hotted up car and they see Carrie. And Chris is so bloody mean girl. She wants John Travolta to just run Carrie over. Like, she's so evil. She's like, no, run her over. And so they go to run her over and Carrie just turns around and just looks at them and flips their car with her telekinesis power. And you know what happens in movies when a car flips? As soon as it lands, it blows up, and that's the end of Chris and John Travolta. Rumor has it John Travolta survived that car flip explosion and went on to become a Scientology member, but that's another story. So Carrie gets home and has a bath because she's covered in blood, and she washes all the blood off her, which ties back to the beginning of the movie. So, beginning of the movie, she's in the shower and starts bleeding. End of the movie, she's covered in blood and washes all the blood off her. There's something in that, but we'll look at that maybe later or maybe not. She's washed herself clean. She gets all the blood off her. She puts on her nightie. She just wants her mum. She just wants that loving reassurance, peace from her mum. And finally, her mum steps out of the shadows. It's quite spooky. Her mum steps out and says, "Come here," or whatever. She holds Carrie and he's stroking her hair with these long, I love the hand movements. It's really a really interesting actor choice from Piper, the mum. She does these really interesting hand movements, like dance movements, but it's really unnatural and unsettling. So she's stroking Carrie's hair and "We'll pray." She has a really deep southern voice. "We'll pray together, woman." And Carrie's like, "Yes, let's pray." And she's really seeking comfort from her mum and from her faith. And she's like, "You were right, mama, they laughed at me." And in the middle of these stroking hairs, comforting strokes and hair stroke, the mum suddenly has a knife and she just stabs Carrie, like, in her back. And Carrie's like, "Oh!" And not only the physical pain, but the betrayal that her mum just tries to kill her. And yeah, it's horrible. Not only Carrie's just completely alone in this world. She's betrayed by the high school. She's betrayed by her mum. Her mum's still trying to attack her. Carrie uses her telekinesis. Oh, I got it wrong before. I think earlier she only threw one knife at her mum. This time she throws all the knives in the house and pretty much gets her mum in a crucifixion pose with all the knives. And then there's all the arrows. And I felt a sense of satisfaction because her mum was batshit crazy. But the pose that her mum ends up is the same as the spooky, weird wall hanging that she made Carrie stare at in the prayer closet. So the fact that her mum dies in the same pose as the wall hanging, it's like, cool, her mum died the way she should die because she was a religious nutter and identified with this strange theology, suffering, just craziness. So the fact that she dies in the same position as one of their saints or whatever, it just fits. It's like, just die, you crazy woman. Then the house starts collapsing, which is a really, from what I remember, I think it's the ending you give a horror movie in the 1970s where you don't know how to end the movie, that the house just starts collapsing or the house takes off like a big rocket, which is the ending for Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like the house turns into a rocket and takes off. I remember a lot of horror movies from the 1970s and early 80s where the house just collapses into itself. So the house starts collapsing and Carrie dies with the house collapsing. The movie doesn't quite end there. The house collapses, Carrie dies with the house. We then see Sue Snell's home and her mum talking on the phone. And the mum is talking about Sue, how Sue just got back from the hospital and she's doing much better, but she's still not well. And then it does a close-up of Sue with her beautiful curly brown hair. And it looks like, we're going into Sue's mind. And Sue's dreaming about herself in a pretty dress, and she's got flowers, and she's going to Carrie's house, and the soil of the house, like the foundations, has all been torn down, so it's just all dirt, and there's just a cross in the middle of the soil, and it says Carrie White burns in hell, which is the graffiti that is all around the town. Everybody writes Carrie White is a fat pig, or eat shit Carrie White. That's something does come up a bit in the movie. Definitely in the book, it references all the graffiti around the town. So Sue walks up to the cross to lay down the flowers for Carrie, and then all of a sudden, a hand shoots out of the ground and grabs Sue's arm and tries to drag her, and Sue starts screaming, and then back in real life, Sue's screaming and grabbing her arm, like she's laying in bed and she's screaming and grabbing her arm, and her mum rushes into the room and says, "It's okay, Sue, it's awesome." And that's how the movie ends. So you're left with the assumption that Sue is horribly traumatized by everything that happened in her hometown, which is totally understandable. The first time I watched Carrie, I was about 5 or 6. I really shouldn't have been watching Carrie at that age, but I was horribly traumatized by that ending. um, very typical ending for a 1970s horror movie, that the character or one of the main character ends up mentally ill, and you assume they're never going to be the same after all that trauma that they survived. It's amazing that they survived. So that's the end of the movie of Carrie. And I'm going to give my ultra-feminist take on Carrie in just a moment.